Now, with Iowa now behind us, all eyes shift to the first primaries of the 2016 cycle. Of course, I'm talking about New Hampshire, and there is no time for campaigns to slow down. New Hampshire coming just 1 week from today. Then things get pretty hectic pretty quickly as you look ahead on the calendar. Andrew has more on that and also on the importance of New Hampshire, where he'll be reporting, as I said, live next week. Andrew?
Well, Rich, let's start with that calendar. You mentioned that New Hampshire is next Tuesday, and after New Hampshire, we only have a week and a half until our next election action, and there's two on the same day. On Saturday, February 20th, Democrats caucus in Nevada, while on the same day, February 20th, Republicans will hold their South Carolina primary. That is on a Saturday. The following Tuesday, that's February 23rd, Republicans hold their caucuses in Nevada. And the Saturday after that, the Democrats then have their turn to primary in South Carolina. It gets confusing. Finally, on March 1st, that's 4 weeks from today, we arrive at Super Tuesday. Democrats will primary and caucus in 12 states and American Samoa. Republicans will pick winners in 14 states. And we could know by then who our nominees are likely to be. But before then, of course, all eyes are on New Hampshire, the Granite State essential to winning the nomination. If you fared well in Iowa, you can solidify your position in New Hampshire. If you stumbled in Iowa, you can rebound in New Hampshire. If you do neither, well, let's just say that in the modern era, only one candidate has failed to win either Iowa or New Hampshire and gone on to win the nomination, and that was Bill Clinton way back in 1992. Now, New Hampshire tends to do one of two things in the modern nomination process. Most often, it serves to balance out or almost offset Iowa, though sometimes it confirms what voters in Iowa have decided. On the Republican side, most recently, New Hampshire has offset Iowa's more conservative vote. Romney and McCain, the more moderate options in the last three open cycles, won in New Hampshire. New Hampshire also has a better history of picking eventual nominees than Iowa does. Iowa's been slightly better at predicting Democratic nominees in recent history. New Hampshire giving Hillary Clinton her comeback in 2008. The states agreed on John Kerry and Al Gore in 2004 and 2000. New Hampshire also gave Bill Clinton his big comeback in 1992. He came in fourth behind Tom Harkin, uncommitted, and Paul Tsongas in Iowa that year.
You've covered New Hampshire a few times. What do you think are going to be the most important tells when you get up there?
I think it's going to be on the Republican side how much people are breaking for Rubio, how much interest there seems to be in Rubio's gatherings. I mean, it'll be interesting to compare that to Trump, but that's sort of immaterial. Does Rubio begin to snowball on coming in a strong third last night in Iowa, and does he start getting the support of other voters who might otherwise go to other mainstream candidates? I think for the Democratic side, it's going to be, does Clinton have another comeback in her to at least eat into some of Bernie Sanders' lead? I don't think anybody expects Bernie Sanders to lose in New Hampshire, but can Hillary generate the same momentum that she did 8 years ago? Does she have an emotional moment? Does she have some other standout moment in the week between Iowa and New Hampshire, like we saw 8 years ago, and enabled her to win then, or at least...
For those folks who don't remember, choked up in New Hampshire, as you said 8 years ago. Okay, pull the curtain back for us. Either it's happening now or certainly is going to happen Tuesday night after the results come in. There's too many Republicans right now. The establishment has made it clear that somebody, whether it's Rubio, and if not Rubio, if Jeb Bush has a third act in him, or Christie or Kasich or whatever, they got to rally around one guy here before the calendar gets too far out. And they got to stop dividing the establishment vote, if you will. I'm sure Rubio went a long way tomorrow, but talk about some of those phone calls, whether it's from donors, from party leaders. What do they say to people to push them out sooner rather than later, but also on their own terms?
I think that the adults in the Republican Party, or those in the establishment in the Republican Party, to give it a less pejorative tone, are not crazy about Cruz. Cruz, after all, is disliked by all his Senate colleagues, House, Senate Democrats and Republicans. I think the more people get to know Senator Cruz, the less they warm up to him. Donald Trump scares a lot of folks in the Republican establishment. They're not sure he's a real conservative, let alone a real Republican. And I think someone like John Kasich, someone who has won a re-election in Iowa, I believe it was by over 60%, was a conservative leader in the House, had all the right credentials, balancing the budget.
In Ohio, which is always that swing state in the election. Exactly.
Balanced the budget in the House of Representatives, did masterfully, as you just said, in Iowa to win again in a blue state. he's somebody worth watching to see if he can come up in New Hampshire and give a little challenge to Rubio. But I think it's really Rubio's effort in New Hampshire we want to look at. But I think Christie and the rest of them are falling by the wayside. My money would be on a dark horse named John Kasich to make some progress and make a name for himself.
He's kind of got to get third place here. You don't get third place. He's even said it himself. He goes, I don't have the money here to keep dragging this thing out. But those tough phone calls, okay, where, and it's, I mean, you've covered it with mayors and governors, whatever, Von Run, where it's Tuesday night. Let's say it doesn't go well for Jeb. It doesn't look right now. Somebody's going to say, listen, love you like a brother here, but I'm going to pull my money. It's going to go somewhere else. Why don't you announce you're getting out here before publicly I got to make the money shift? Or you got party leaders saying Jeb can't win and it gets bad. Those got to be tough phone calls, but they got to take place. I don't think they can wait, Dominic. I think they got to take place Tuesday night, Wednesday at the latest.
With Jeb Bush, it doesn't matter what party leaders say because show me the money. He's got the money to hang around whether you like it or not. The governors, somebody's got to go. Kasich.
Christie at 10th place last night.
Well, Christie, you know, he never really competed in Iowa. He's put everything on New Hampshire. So either and even if he does good in New Hampshire, where does he go from here? He's hoping against all odds that he can beat expectations. The money will come in. He lives to fight another day. Chances are, you're looking at Christie being done and possibly Kasich. It depends on
remember
how
how much
well.
we're talking about Ben Carson?
Yes.
He's going to spend the next 2 days in Florida resting up.
Ben Carson was
I know that,
always
but
a joke.
But do you remember how he was the flavor of the month not that long ago?
They're all the flavor of the month, but it was never going to happen with Ben Carson. You might as well go back to 999 or 666, whatever it was.
Kane,
Well,
Herman Kane.
You're talking about like the party apparatus forcing candidates out. I think it's easier to do with Kasich or Christie because they need institutional support and they need donors to come through. Bush, I think, gets a little longer leash if he doesn't make a big showing in New Hampshire because of the money that he has. Ben Carson, you don't even need the party apparatus to do that. His money will start disappearing. His supporters will start disappearing. It'll be fascinating to see where they go. But he's done. He just doesn't realize it.
The governor of Ohio, there he is live in New Hampshire, where he's made it clear. Doesn't go well there, he's going to be out.
I think Rubio's performance in Iowa really hurt Kasich. I mean, I think Kasich had a window, the same way that Christie did in New Hampshire, and they have been focusing a lot more of their energy. But Rubio last night, to my mind, established himself as that mainstream pathway guy. And so now they're gonna have to beat him in New Hampshire to get that mantle from him, and I don't see how anybody does.
I don't know. I don't know. I think you're right. I think there could be a surprise. I think whoever comes in third place, all of a sudden that becomes a storyline. But I think the most fascinating thing is, how does Hillary choose to campaign? Because not a lot of black folk in Iowa and New Hampshire, but there are going to be in South Carolina. And you're going to start getting a good minority vote also when you're talking Nevada as well. She saw, even in Iowa, the minority vote broke for her significantly over Sanders. Does she just say, let the big news cycle go on all they want? Once I get through South Carolina, once I get to Super Tuesday, this thing's all over? Or does she say, I got to change my message here because no one's buying this, vote for me for my experience and I'm the inevitable candidate? The tone that comes out of New Hampshire to me is going to be fascinating.
I just want to add some historical perspective just to tell you how wild and unpredictable this year is going to be. 60% of the votes in the Republican Iowa caucus went to either Cuban Americans or an African American for president. And that was in the Republican caucus. And on the Democratic caucus, 50% of the votes went to a woman candidate and 50% went to a Jewish guy. If you don't think things are changing in America, you got to take another look. And I'll add this. If you don't think that the presidency of Barack Hussein Obama wasn't transformative, I would urge you to look again.
Interesting.
Richard, just quickly to your point, the question that you brought up, I know you got to get to a break. That's why it was masterful what Hillary's folks did last night. Before the results came in, we won. We won because they set the narrative. So before the media could start attacking her for losing the expectations game going into New Hampshire, she's made it where at least for 24 hours or 48 hours, she's doing pretty good. And once she gets to South Carolina and the other states that Andrew mentioned, finito. It's over. She will
Your
have the
lips to God's ears.
nomination.
We're going to find out. Coming up next, we're going to take a step back and take a look at the big picture. Should the whole primary system be changed so that Iowa and New Hampshire don't have so much clout so early here? And exactly why are people flipping coins here and having to get together in groups to decide who they're voting for? We'll talk about that after this.